Camilla Parker Bowles just had her Windsor Castle access permanently revoked by a woman who's been dead for years. And the way it happened is more brutal than anything you'd see written for television. There was no balcony, no prepared statement, no carefully softened press release. It came from a solicitor standing in a silent room, holding a sealed document carrying the late Queen's own private signature. And within minutes, Camilla's future at Windsor was simply gone. Queen Elizabeth left behind a permanent clause. Here's the detail that makes this whole story inescapable. No king, no courtier, no royal marriage can overturn it. That's not a preference. That's not a suggestion softly worded into a family agreement. That's law, written to survive changes of reign, changes of title, changes of household structure, all of it. So before anyone in that room even opened their mouth, the outcome had already been decided, long before this morning. Picture the room itself. Palace solicitors summon King Charles, Prince William, Princess Anne, and Camilla into Windsor's administrative wing after archivists confirmed the authenticity of a sealed addendum tucked quietly inside the late Queen's estate instructions. An addendum is simply an addition legally attached to an existing document. This one carried the weight of a private command. Windsor isn't just a residence, it represents continuity, family authority, a legacy that outlived the woman who built it. The senior solicitor opens the file. He doesn't soften a single word. Nobody in that room dares interrupt him. Queen Elizabeth's clause permanently blocks Camilla, the Queen consort, from living inside Windsor, from holding private apartments there, from exercising any household authority within its walls. Charles doesn't speak. His fingers tighten against the table because something is landing on him all at once. Even as the reigning monarch, he cannot undo what his own mother designed to outlast him. Here's a question worth sitting with for a second. If someone you loved left behind one instruction meant to protect you from a decision you hadn't made yet, would you want to know about it while they were still alive, or would you rather it stay hidden until it was already too late to ask why? Type no or hidden in the comments. I want to see where everyone lands on this one. Camilla assumes at first that this is about ceremony. Maybe she's barred from certain formal positions. Maybe there's a restriction on hosting. Then the solicitor clarifies exactly how far this actually reaches. No overnight stays, no private office, no authority over staff. And then the part that truly lands. No future widowhood arrangement inside Windsor's walls. They planned for what would happen if Charles died first and made certain even then she couldn't remain. Her face changes the moment it sinks in. This isn't temporary. This isn't symbolic. It reaches into every version of the future she ever imagined standing beside the king.
Anne notices something else. A second sealed page resting beneath the first. She asks what it contains. The solicitor refuses to say, not until everyone in the room formally acknowledges the restriction first. William stays still, but his glance toward his sister says he already understands more than he's letting on. And then Camilla does something that tells you exactly where her mind has gone. She reaches into her handbag, removes her Windsor access card, and sets it down on the polished table. One sharp click. The solicitor tells her, quietly, that security will deactivate it by sunset. She pushes her chair back and asks the question none of them can answer for her. Why did the late Queen distrust her this completely? Charles looks down. William looks toward Anne, and somewhere underneath their silence sits an incident this family buried years ago. The clause has closed Windsor's gates, but the deeper wound isn't the restriction itself. It's realizing that Queen Elizabeth expected this exact moment long before anyone else in that room ever saw it coming. For Charles, Windsor was never just stone and ceremony. It was memory. It was the place his mother carried the monarchy through its hardest years, quietly, without ever asking for credit. And now the woman he loved had been legally separated from that inheritance by the mother he still mourns. One signature placed him between two loyalties, and whichever way he turned, it was going to feel like betrayal. He'd spent years trying to bring peace between his marriage and the crown, believing patience and service and public acceptance had finally secured Camilla's place inside royal life. But Windsor means something different to every single person standing in that room. To the king, it holds his mother's presence. To William, it represents continuity, the unbroken line passed from one reign to the next. To Anne, it demands obedience, and to Camilla, it had become the final proof she truly belonged. She waits until they're alone before she speaks again. Her anger has faded into something quieter, something that hurts more. Charles tries to explain that defying the clause could provoke a constitutional crisis, a conflict over whether even a sovereign can ignore a binding instruction tied to royal property. But she isn't hearing a legal argument. She's hearing hesitation. She's hearing a husband preparing to hand her future over to the judgment of a woman who isn't even alive to explain herself. Camilla asks him plainly, will she always be a tolerated outsider even after decades beside him? Charles opens his mouth, then stops. That pause wounds her more than any answer ever could have. She asks if he'll leave Windsor with her that evening. He looks toward the closed door and tells her softly that he has to stay for the next briefing. She nods once, but the silence between them says everything neither of them wants to say out loud. Down the corridor, William finds Anne and lowers his voice. He believes the clause wasn't written just to exclude Camilla. It was written to prevent a quiet transfer of control long before Charles ever became king. Anne tells him something their mother once warned her. Royal residences are rarely taken through ownership. They're captured slowly, through staff appointments, private offices, guest lists, security access, piece by piece, until authority shifts before anyone even notices it happened. That's the part of this story people miss. It was never about whether Camilla was liked or disliked or accepted by the public. It was about whether Windsor's actual control could change hands quietly through 1,000 small decisions nobody was watching closely enough to stop. Charles returns to the legal room and demands the full history behind the restriction. The solicitor opens a second file and reveals that one night at Windsor permanently changed how Queen Elizabeth saw the woman her son loved.
Before we go further, quick reminder. If you're new here, hit subscribe. This channel covers royal stories like this one every week, and you don't want to miss what's coming in the next chapter. Years before any solicitor opened that sealed file, Windsor had already witnessed a private confrontation almost nobody understood at the time. It happened after a memorial reception for Prince Philip, a disputed guest list, a locked department, one unauthorized order reaching Queen Elizabeth within minutes of each other. By midnight, the monarch had made a decision that would outlive her. Camilla's household had been quietly expanding for years. More office space, greater access to guest suites, a stronger voice in ceremonial planning, closer control over private staff ahead of the succession that hadn't even come yet. Elizabeth allowed limited cooperation, but she refused to let Windsor's authority shift before the crown had formally passed. To her, the castle wasn't simply a home, it was a living center of command, and even small changes could reveal who already believed the next reign had begun. The breaking point came the night of that memorial reception. Camilla instructed a senior housekeeper to prepare the former East Terrace rooms for her own future use. The order was given without the Queen's approval. Those rooms carried deep family meaning. They'd belonged to Elizabeth's private household. Changing their use would have signaled something far bigger than comfort. It would have signaled succession before surrender. The housekeeper approached the Queen after the reception, shaken, unsure whether she was even allowed to ask the question sitting on her tongue. Was Her Majesty truly giving up those rooms while she was still living? Elizabeth understood immediately. She summoned Camilla privately, asked who had authorized the decision. Camilla answered that she was only planning ahead for continuity, but the Queen heard something colder underneath those words. She heard a claim being made before permission had ever been offered. Elizabeth took the room assignment sheet, folded it once without reading it aloud, placed it beneath a silver paperweight, and told Camilla quietly that those rooms were not waiting for her. That same evening, she called Anne to her side and dictated the first version of the Windsor restriction. She explained something simple but absolute. Service beside the sovereign does not, on its own, grant guardianship over royal inheritance. Months later, solicitors strengthened the wording, added a clause preventing any future king from restoring residential power through a new warrant of his own. Charles learned, eventually, that his mother had raised a serious warning. He chose silence, hoping the anger would fade on its own. Instead, the warning became law. And when Camilla learns years later that Charles knew about that warning and said nothing, the legal dispute stops being about property. It becomes something far more personal. She can endure a solicitor's cold language. She can endure surrendering an access card in front of witnesses. What she cannot endure is learning that her own husband once knew and let her walk into this blind. Behind closed doors, the legal fight turns into a marital reckoning. No aids, no prepared statements to soften what's coming. Only a question Charles has avoided answering for years. Camilla carries the historical file into a private drawing room and sets it down in front of him with both hands. Her voice stays controlled at first, but the restraint only sharpens the accusation underneath it. When did he first learn his mother was considering this? Charles admits she'd raised concerns about household boundaries, about who controls rooms, staff, and daily decisions inside a royal residence. He insists he never saw the final clause, believed the disagreement had ended after the East Terrace incident. Camilla doesn't accept that.
She reminds him of every year she stood beside him, through scandal, through rejection, through public anger she was never allowed to answer publicly. And now, she says, he's protecting his mother's memory while leaving the living woman beside him to carry the punishment alone. Charles answers quietly that defending her can't mean destroying his mother's final instruction.
Then Camilla reveals something nobody in that legal room knew yet. She had already approved preliminary plans for a permanent Windsor office, staff transfers, a private communications suite, believing Charles would formalize it later, once the timing felt right. He stares at her, because suddenly his mother's fears don't look like suspicion anymore. They look like prophecy. William enters only after hearing their voices rise through the hall. He confirms every proposed transfer has already been frozen. Camilla turns on him immediately, accuses him of using his grandmother's clause to speed up her removal. He denies acting from revenge, but his calm only makes her angrier. She asks Charles directly to promise he'll overturn the clause. He reaches toward her. She steps back, and the space between them becomes the only answer either of them is willing to give. Then the door opens again. Anne walks in, carrying the second sealed page. She doesn't hand it to Charles. She places it in front of the solicitor instead, and waits. The second page doesn't offer sympathy, doesn't offer compromise, doesn't offer a way out for anyone in that room. It names the Guardian. Queen Elizabeth had anticipated exactly this moment, a future where Charles would stand torn between his wife and his inheritance, so she removed the final decision from him completely. The authority to enforce the Windsor Clause belongs to the one member of this family she trusted to act without sentiment, without hesitation, without fear of what it would cost her personally: Princess Anne. Anne doesn't celebrate the announcement. She stands beside the solicitor as he explains she's been named permanent guardian of the restriction, responsible for challenging any household order designed to quietly bypass her mother's command. It doesn't make her owner of Windsor. It doesn't place her above the king. It gives her one narrow, decisive responsibility: protecting residential access, private apartments, and staffing tied to Camilla permanently. Charles absorbs the meaning in silence. His mother trusted his sister to enforce a decision she believed he might be too emotionally divided to carry out himself.
That truth cuts deeper than any legal language on the page. He is still the sovereign, and yet in this one matter, his judgment has been quietly limited by someone who understood his weaknesses better than anyone alive. Anne turns to her brother and tells her she feels no triumph in this. She'd surrender the responsibility immediately, she says, if doing so wouldn't betray their mother's final wishes. Charles looks at her and understands for the first time that duty hasn't spared her either. It simply denied her the comfort of choosing something easier. The solicitor continues. Camilla may attend ceremonies at Windsor, but only as an invited consort. Approval required for every single visit. Repeated attendance can never quietly become a claim to residence. Then Anne uncovers something worse. Several recent staffing requests had been designed to create a permanent Queen Consorts unit hidden inside the castle's structure. Offices, aides, communications, daily household control, all placed under Camilla without ever formally granting her private rooms. Exactly the kind of quiet transfer Queen Elizabeth had warned about years before it almost happened. Anne signs an immediate suspension order. Every arrangement connected to that unit has to be dismantled before morning. She places the document in front of Charles, turns the pen toward him, and waits. After a long silence, he signs. When Anne keeps one hand flat against the page, even after his signature is done, the room finally empties. She stays behind, alone with her mother's signature, tears gathering before she folds the document and returns to duty.
The authority has been identified, but the moment Anne enforces it, the clause stops being a private family secret, and by dawn, Windsor Castle has already begun to change. Doors that once opened automatically now require written approval. Staff expecting new assignments receive cancellation notices instead. A private office prepared quietly for Camilla is emptied before she ever gets the chance to enter it. The clause is no longer just a sentence hidden inside a sealed file. It's a physical reality now, measured in returned keys, silent corridors, and one royal departure nobody can disguise any longer. Security teams receive new access rules before breakfast. Household managers cancel room allocations. Transportation staff quietly remove Windsor from Camilla's private schedule. It doesn't strip her ceremonial role. She can still attend formal engagements beside Charles. But every residential privilege, every unsupervised visit, every trace of staffing power inside Windsor has ended. Camilla walks into the office prepared for her future team and stops. The desks are cleared. The equipment is gone. Only a small box of personal stationery remains beside the door. Her longtime aide offers to challenge the decision publicly, argues that silence will make the humiliation look deserved. She refuses. An open attack on Queen Elizabeth's own instruction would isolate Charles, harden William, and force Anne to defend the clause even more fiercely than she already has. Security delivers the next blow with quiet formality. Even during state occasions, she'll be required to leave once the official program ends, unless Anne grants written permission otherwise. Camilla can enter as part of the monarchy and still be forbidden from remaining as family. Charles searches for another way out, asks whether a private apartment could exist under a different household name, something attached to his own office instead of hers. The solicitor tells him plainly that the clause anticipated that exact move. No renamed department, no secondary suite, no sovereign warrant can restore what Windsor has already closed. Camilla hands over her keyring, but one small brass key stays caught around her finger. She removes it slowly, places it in the officer's palm, and walks toward the waiting car without looking back.
Charles watches from an upper corridor, raises one hand toward the window, then lets it fall when he realizes she can't see him. Before the car pulls away, William sends a message asking to speak with Camilla, alone. No explanation attached. It could be another rejection, or it could be the first honest peace Windsor has offered anyone in this story so far. William doesn't meet her as an heir confronting a defeated consort. He meets her as a son who understands exactly what it means to live beneath the weight of the past. No lawyers, no aides, no family standing nearby to witness it. They sit across from each other inside a small room beyond Windsor's private chapel. For the first time, the conversation moves away from access and authority and toward the wounds neither of them has ever said out loud. William explains why he asked for this meeting. He believes continued humiliation would damage his father, fracture the family, and turn his grandmother's protective clause into something closer to revenge than protection. Camilla arrives expecting another demand. Instead, he begins by acknowledging something simple. The restriction doesn't erase her years of service or her place beside the king. She lowers her guard slowly. Losing Windsor, she admits, hurt because it confirmed her oldest fear,
that no amount of loyalty could ever fully free her from the judgment surrounding how her relationship with Charles began. William doesn't dismiss her pain. He explains that Windsor carries his grandmother's memory, his mother's suffering, and the monarchy he'll one day inherit himself. Every office, every staff transfer, every private suite felt personal to him, even when it was framed as simple administration. To him, the castle was never territory to claim. It was a trust meant to be preserved. Then he offers a settlement. Camilla keeps full ceremonial dignity and receives an independent household elsewhere. Windsor's private guardianship stays with the direct line of succession. She agrees not to challenge the clause on one condition: the palace can't describe her departure as punishment, and no loyal staff member should lose their career over this. She asks him one final question. Does he believe his grandmother hated her? William pauses before answering. The late queen, he says, feared what power might do to this family. She never denied Camilla's humanity. Before she leaves, Camilla touches the back of the empty chair beside her and says quietly that she wishes this conversation had happened years earlier, when forgiveness might have cost him less. William promises to bring the agreement to Charles. Then he warns her, details from the solicitors' meeting have already reached the press. The private settlement just prevented a family war. But outside Windsor's walls, the secret clause is already becoming something much bigger, a national judgment on memory and marriage and the limits of royal power. At sunrise, the story leaves the palace entirely. Britain wakes up to a restriction unlike anything announced in modern royal memory. A reigning queen consort permanently barred from making Windsor Castle her home. The public doesn't read it as a technical dispute. They see a final command from beyond the grave, a rebuke delivered across time. A family forced to confront wounds the crown spent decades trying to keep hidden. The palace issues a formal statement before speculation can outrun the truth. It confirms the late monarch created a binding private instruction, and that Charles, William, Anne, and Camilla have all agreed to respect it. The wording sounds calm. The meaning is devastating. Camilla remains queen consort. She'll continue her public duties beside the king, but Windsor's apartments, its household structure, its long-term guardianship, all of it stays permanently beyond her reach. Some praise the clause as protection for the crown. Others call it a final humiliation imposed on a woman who spent decades supporting Charles through hostility she never asked for. Charles watches the coverage in silence. Commentators keep framing this as his mother's victory over his wife, turning private grief into a public contest between two women he loved in very different ways.
He refuses to react, but Anne understands the pain underneath his silence. She appears beside him at the next official engagement, standing close enough to send one unmistakable message. The siblings remain united, even after their mother placed this authority in her hands alone. The palace then confirms the private settlement. Camilla has voluntarily abandoned any legal challenge in exchange for a separate, permanent household of her own. It softens some criticism, but it also confirms publicly that the exclusion is final. Outside Windsor's gate, a crowd gathers beneath a newspaper billboard. The headline reads simply, "The Queen's Last Command." At exactly noon,
The castle flag rises as Camilla's car passes by, without entering. The crowd watches in silence as the vehicle continues down the long walk. Inside, she sees the headline, closes her eyes for one breath, then sits upright before the cameras can catch anything more. One final appearance still waits for her at Windsor, where she'll enter only as an invited consort for the very last time. Camilla returns for a memorial service under the exact terms she agreed to, not as resident, not as household authority, only as the king's consort and a member of the family, standing at a careful distance from everything she once hoped to belong to. She enters through the ceremonial entrance, and officials confirm her visit will last only for the service itself. Windsor is no longer a place she can call home. Charles stands beside her, making one thing unmistakable to everyone watching. Respecting his mother's instruction never meant abandoning his wife. Camilla pauses near the corridor leading toward the old private apartments. She knows she'll never cross that threshold again. Anne approaches without triumph in her expression. She admits quietly that enforcing the clause caused pain she didn't enjoy carrying, but their shared duty, she says, was protecting the institution from personal authority that could quietly consume it. Camilla answers with quiet finality. She'll never seek Windsor access again. Then she hands Anne a signed confirmation formally dissolving the proposed Queen Consort's unit for good. William has already ordered the East Terrace rooms preserved as part of Queen Elizabeth's historical household. He's also approved a separate residence where Camilla can serve beside Charles without ever competing for Windsor's legacy again. Before leaving, Camilla places her signed renunciation on a small table beneath a portrait of the late Queen. Anne takes the document. Then, instead of turning away, she offers her hand. Camilla accepts it. Charles watches in silence as two women release years of quiet hostility without pretending the pain underneath it was ever imagined. Queen Elizabeth's clause didn't destroy the monarchy. It didn't end a marriage either. What it actually did was draw a boundary between love and duty, standing exactly where they were always meant to meet. Windsor stayed protected. The marriage survived. Anne fulfilled her mother's final command. William guarded the inheritance that will one day be his. And Camilla chose dignity over a battle she was never going to win. She lost the castle that might have finally confirmed her acceptance, but by refusing revenge, she gained something no clause could ever grant her: respect. The gates closed behind her for the final time as anything close to a resident, and Windsor remained exactly where Queen Elizabeth placed it, beyond possession, beyond marriage, protected for whichever generation comes next. If this story kept you watching until the very end, that's exactly why this channel exists. New royal stories drop regularly, and there's already something waiting in the files that connects directly to this one. Subscribe so you're here the moment it's ready to be told.